One conversation can change your life forever. One wrong word can destroy years of respect. Every day, people manipulate you without raising their voice, defeat you without touching you, and win against you before you even realize a game has begun. The painful truth is this: the world doesn't always reward the strongest, the kindest, or even the smartest. Most people believe that every battle is fought with words, strength, or visible action. They think victory belongs to the loudest voice in the room, the person with the highest position, or the one who appears the most confident. But history tells a different story. The greatest victories were often decided long before anyone recognized a conflict had even begun. Every conversation, every negotiation, every friendship, and every rivalry contains an invisible battlefield, a place where perception, emotion, patience, and psychology determine who ultimately gains the advantage. The people who consistently succeed are not those who react the fastest. They are the ones who notice what everyone else overlooks. The average person walks through life responding to appearances. They hear someone's words and immediately accept them as truth. They see confidence and mistake it for competence. They witness kindness and assume sincerity. But the world rarely works on the surface. Human beings are driven by hidden desires, unspoken fears, personal ambitions, and emotional wounds that they rarely reveal openly. What people say is only a fraction of what they truly mean. Their actions, timing, body language, and silence often tell a much more accurate story than their words ever could. This is where your first advantage begins. Stop becoming obsessed with speaking. Become obsessed with observing. Observation is not passive. It is one of the most powerful forms of intelligence. Every room you enter contains valuable information waiting to be collected. Who interrupts others? Who seeks validation? Who becomes uncomfortable when a certain topic arises? Who watches instead of talking? These details may appear insignificant, but together they create a complete psychological profile of the people around you. Most individuals expose themselves without realizing it. Their habits become predictable, their emotions become repetitive, their decisions follow invisible patterns. They believe they are unique, but human nature often repeats itself with remarkable consistency. Once you understand these patterns, people become far less mysterious. The greatest mistake people make is reacting immediately. Someone insults them and they instantly fight back. Someone criticizes them and they become defensive. Someone challenges them and they rush to prove themselves. Every emotional reaction hands control to the other person. The moment someone can predict your response, they begin controlling your behavior without your permission. Imagine a chess player who moves every piece the moment they feel threatened. They are no longer playing strategically, they are simply reacting. Eventually, they fall into traps they never saw coming. Life operates in much the same way. Emotional reactions narrow your vision. Strategic observation expands it. This does not mean becoming cold or emotionless. It means refusing to let emotion make your decisions. Feel everything, but reveal very little. Think before speaking. Watch before acting. Ask yourself one simple question whenever someone behaves unexpectedly. What do they gain from this? That question changes everything. Every action has a motive. Every compliment has a purpose. Every criticism carries an intention. Sometimes those intentions are positive, sometimes they are manipulative. Your responsibility is not to become suspicious of everyone, but to become aware that human behavior is rarely random. Notice how successful negotiators spend far more time asking questions than making statements. They understand that information is the most valuable currency in any interaction. Every answer reveals another piece of the puzzle. Every pause exposes uncertainty. Every unnecessary explanation often hides insecurity. Silence becomes one of your greatest allies. Most people fear silence because they believe they must constantly fill it with words. But silence creates pressure. It encourages others to keep talking. And the more they talk, the more they reveal. People often disclose their priorities, fears, and weaknesses simply because they become uncomfortable with quiet moments. Learn to become comfortable in that silence. The invisible battlefield also exists inside your own mind. Before you can understand others, you must understand yourself. What situations make you impatient? What comments instantly trigger your anger? What compliments make you overconfident? Your emotional weaknesses are the very doors through which manipulation enters. If someone discovers that criticism makes you defensive, they will criticize you to throw you off balance. If they know praise makes you careless, they will flatter you before asking for something. Every unexamined emotion becomes an opportunity for someone else to influence your decisions. This is why self-awareness is the first level of dominance. The person who cannot predict themselves will never accurately predict others. There is another powerful truth that many ignore. People constantly reveal what they value most. Some crave recognition, others chase security, some desire power, others desperately seek approval. Once you recognize what motivates someone, their future decisions become much easier to anticipate. You stop reacting to isolated actions and begin understanding the deeper forces driving their behavior. The world belongs to those who notice the details everyone else ignores. A slight hesitation before answering, a forced smile during celebration, the repeated mention of a particular fear, the subtle shift in someone's tone when discussing success or failure. These signals are always present, but only disciplined observers recognize their significance. Real power is rarely loud. It doesn't rush to prove itself or demand attention. It watches patiently, gathers information quietly, and moves only when the moment is right. While others are busy trying to appear impressive, the true strategist is studying the entire board, understanding every player, and preparing a move that no one sees coming. If you cannot control your own emotions, someone else eventually will. This is one of the harshest truths about power, and it is also one of the least understood. People spend years learning how to persuade others, influence conversations, and gain respect, yet they neglect the one battlefield that determines every outcome: their own mind. The greatest weakness is not a lack of intelligence or talent. It is the inability to remain composed when life becomes uncomfortable. Every person has emotional triggers. A careless insult, an unexpected rejection, a betrayal, or a public challenge can instantly awaken anger, fear, insecurity, or pride. In those moments, most people believe they are making decisions, but they are actually surrendering control. Emotion begins driving the vehicle while reason quietly steps into the passenger seat. Observe people during conflict. The loudest person often believes they are demonstrating strength. In reality, they are revealing exactly where they can be manipulated. The person who shouts first, argues endlessly, or desperately tries to prove themselves is exposing emotional dependence. They need validation, they need victory, they need the approval of others. That need becomes a weakness that skilled individuals recognize immediately. Real strength rarely announces itself. Imagine standing in the middle of a violent storm. The wind is chaotic. The rain is relentless. Everything around you moves unpredictably. Now imagine a mountain standing in the center of that same storm. The mountain does not fight the wind. It does not complain about the rain. It simply remains unmoved. That is emotional discipline. The world will constantly test your patience, your confidence, and your character. The question is never whether challenges will come. The question is whether you will become the storm or remain the mountain. One of the greatest advantages you can develop is the ability to pause before reacting. Most people mistake speed for intelligence. They believe the fastest response is the strongest response, but wisdom often lives inside the pause. A few seconds of silence can prevent years of regret. A single calm decision can overcome hundreds of emotional reactions. When someone insults you, they are often searching for evidence that they can affect your emotions. If you immediately become angry, you confirm their success. If you remain calm, you force them into uncertainty. Suddenly, they begin questioning themselves instead of controlling you. Silence can be more intimidating than anger because it cannot be easily interpreted. Patience creates another form of power. We live in a world addicted to instant gratification. Everyone wants immediate answers, immediate revenge, immediate recognition, and immediate success. This impatience causes people to reveal their intentions too early. They rush opportunities. They expose their plans. They become predictable. The patient person sees farther than everyone else. Think about experienced hunters in the wilderness. They do not chase every movement they notice. They observe. They wait. They understand timing. They know that one well-timed action is worth more than 100 desperate attempts. Life rewards the same principle. Strategic patience often accomplishes what aggressive force never can. Another mistake people make is allowing their ego to control every interaction. Ego whispers dangerous lies. It says you must always have the last word. It says every criticism deserves a response. It says every disagreement must become a battle. But not every fight deserves your attention. Sometimes walking away is not surrender. Sometimes it is evidence that you understand the value of your own energy. People often believe power comes from winning arguments. In reality, power comes from choosing which arguments are worth having in the first place. Every unnecessary conflict drains attention, emotional energy, and valuable time. Those who master themselves become highly selective about where they invest their focus. Confidence also looks very different from insecurity. Insecure people constantly seek recognition. They announce every achievement, defend every decision, and explain themselves to everyone. Genuine confidence has no such urgency. It does not need constant applause because it is built internally rather than externally. This is why truly powerful individuals often appear relaxed, even under enormous pressure. They are not calm because life is easy. They are calm because they have trained themselves to separate emotion from action. Your face, your voice, and your body language communicate far more than your words. If anxiety controls your posture, people sense uncertainty. If anger dominates your expression, people recognize your emotional trigger. But when your presence remains steady regardless of the situation, you become difficult to read, difficult to provoke, and difficult to manipulate. Unpredictability creates influence. When people cannot accurately predict your reactions, they hesitate. They become more cautious around you because they cannot rely on emotional shortcuts. They must think carefully instead of simply pressing your psychological buttons. Self-control also requires discipline in moments of success. Most people understand the danger of anger, but very few recognize the danger of excitement. Success often makes people careless. They become overconfident. They reveal future plans before they are ready. They underestimate competitors. They stop observing because they believe they have already won. History is filled with individuals who lost everything not because they were weak during failure, but because they became arrogant during victory. Humility protects intelligence. Every experience offers information if your emotions do not block your vision. Failure teaches lessons that pride refuses to hear. Criticism sometimes exposes weaknesses that compliments never reveal. Even difficult people become valuable teachers because they show you where your patience still needs strengthening. The highest level of discipline is reaching a point where your emotions serve your purpose instead of controlling your direction. Anger becomes determination instead of recklessness. Fear becomes preparation instead of paralysis. Confidence becomes quiet consistency instead of loud arrogance. At that point, you stop becoming a prisoner of circumstances and begin becoming the architect of your own responses, regardless of who stands in front of you or what challenge attempts to shake your resolve. One of the greatest advantages you can possess is not extraordinary intelligence, immense wealth, or physical strength. It is the ability to understand people before they understand themselves. Every success in life depends on human interaction. Business depends on people. Leadership depends on people. Relationships depend on people. Opportunities come through people. Even your greatest obstacles often come in the form of people. The individual who learns to accurately read human nature gains an advantage that cannot easily be taken away. Most people make a critical mistake. They listen only to words, but words are often the least reliable part of communication. People carefully choose what they say because they want to create a certain image. They want to appear confident, generous, intelligent, or trustworthy. Words can be rehearsed, masks can be worn, personalities can be performed, but behavior tells a much deeper story. Human beings constantly reveal themselves through small details they rarely notice. A person may claim they are confident, yet they avoid eye contact when challenged. Someone may insist they are happy for another person's success, yet their smile disappears for a split second before returning. Another may promise loyalty, but they consistently disappear whenever responsibility appears. These small inconsistencies are not accidents. They are windows into genuine character. Your task is to stop listening only with your ears and begin observing with your eyes. Every person lives according to invisible motivations. Some are driven by fear of rejection, others by the desire for admiration. Some crave security above all else. Others are willing to sacrifice everything for status and recognition. Until you identify what someone truly values, you cannot fully understand why they behave the way they do. This is why first impressions can be dangerously misleading. Confidence is often mistaken for competence. Kindness is mistaken for honesty. Charm is mistaken for integrity. Yet history has repeatedly shown that appearances can be carefully designed. The most persuasive individuals are not always the most sincere. The loudest leaders are not always the strongest. The friendliest smile is not always the most trustworthy. Instead of asking yourself whether someone is good or bad, ask a better question. What consistently motivates this person? Patterns reveal truth. One action can be accidental, two actions may be coincidence, but repeated behavior becomes identity. If someone constantly seeks attention, attention has become one of their deepest needs. If someone repeatedly avoids accountability, responsibility is something they fear. If someone always blames others for failure while claiming personal credit for success, you are witnessing a pattern rather than an isolated event. Wise observers never judge people by isolated moments. They study consistency. Listening also requires discipline. Most conversations fail because people do not actually listen. They wait for their turn to speak. Their mind is busy preparing responses while the other person is revealing valuable information. Every unnecessary interruption is a missed opportunity to understand someone more deeply. People love talking about themselves. They speak about their experiences, frustrations, dreams, disappointments, and ambitions. While they believe they are simply having a conversation, they are often handing you a map of their personality. Listen carefully to recurring topics. Someone who constantly discusses status may secretly fear insignificance. Someone obsessed with criticizing others may be hiding personal insecurity. Someone who repeatedly speaks about betrayal may carry unresolved emotional wounds. Their favorite stories often reveal their strongest emotions. Questions become more powerful than statements. The person asking thoughtful questions controls the direction of the conversation while appearing completely relaxed. Instead of rushing to impress others with your knowledge, become fascinated by understanding them. Curiosity builds trust. Observation builds wisdom. Body language also speaks continuously. Notice posture during moments of pressure. Watch facial expressions before words are spoken. Observe how someone's energy changes when particular names or subjects appear. Human beings experience emotions before they explain them. Their bodies often reveal the truth before their minds have time to create a convincing explanation. Microexpressions disappear within seconds, yet they communicate enormous amounts of information. A slight tightening around the eyes, a forced smile that never reaches genuine warmth, a brief hesitation before answering an important question. These moments cannot always tell you exactly what someone is thinking, but they often tell you that something deeper exists beneath the surface. Do not become obsessed with finding deception everywhere. The goal is not paranoia. The goal is awareness. Equally important is understanding that people change depending on circumstances. Observe how someone treats those who cannot benefit them. Notice how they behave when they possess authority. Watch how they respond after failure or success. Character becomes most visible when conditions change. Pressure reveals priorities. Success reveals humility or arrogance. Failure reveals resilience or excuses. Power reveals integrity or selfishness. Every environment removes another layer of the mask. Another powerful principle is learning to separate emotions from facts. Sometimes we see what we want to see rather than what actually exists. Attraction can blind judgment. Admiration can hide flaws. Fear can exaggerate threats. If your emotions dominate your observations, your conclusions become unreliable. This is why disciplined observers remain patient before forming opinions. They gather evidence over time instead of making permanent judgments from temporary impressions. There is another hidden lesson that few recognize. The more accurately you understand others, the more compassionate you become. You begin realizing that much of human behavior is driven by insecurity, loneliness, fear, pride, and the universal desire to feel significant. This understanding does not require you to trust everyone or excuse harmful behavior. It simply allows you to predict actions with greater clarity instead of reacting with surprise. Eventually, reading people becomes less about discovering their secrets and more about recognizing universal patterns of human nature. You stop being easily deceived by appearances because you understand that every action has a motive, every habit leaves a trail, every emotion influences behavior, and every person, no matter how skilled they are at hiding behind words, will always reveal their true character through the consistency of their actions over time. Most people misunderstand the nature of power. They believe dominance comes from defeating every opponent, winning every argument, and proving themselves in every situation. They think strength is measured by how many battles they fight and how loudly they defend their position. But the greatest strategists throughout history understood something entirely different. The highest form of victory is the one that requires the least amount of conflict. Real power is not found in constant confrontation. It is found in making conflict unnecessary. The average person wastes enormous amounts of energy trying to convince everyone they are right. They argue with strangers, compete with friends, respond to every insult, and attempt to correct every misunderstanding. In doing so, they unknowingly surrender the most valuable resource they possess, their attention. Every unnecessary battle steals time, drains emotional strength, and distracts them from their true objectives. The truly powerful individual asks a different question. Will winning this battle actually move me closer to my goal? If the answer is no, they walk away without regret. Walking away is often mistaken for weakness because society celebrates dramatic confrontations. Movies glorify revenge. Social media rewards arguments. Pride encourages retaliation. Yet life repeatedly demonstrates that those who react to every challenge become prisoners of other people's behavior. Every insult becomes a command. Every criticism becomes an obligation. Every disagreement becomes a distraction. Freedom begins when you decide that not every invitation to fight deserves your acceptance. There is a remarkable psychological advantage in allowing others to underestimate you. Most people desperately want to appear intelligent, powerful, and important. They constantly advertise their abilities because they fear being overlooked. Ironically, this creates resistance. People naturally become cautious around those who constantly display superiority. The wise strategist understands another principle. Never reveal the full extent of your strength before it becomes necessary. When people underestimate you, they lower their guard. They become careless with information. They assume they understand you completely. They stop preparing because they believe victory is already theirs. Meanwhile, you continue observing, learning, and positioning yourself without attracting unnecessary attention. History repeatedly rewards patience over pride. Consider how water moves through nature. Water does not force mountains to move. It flows around obstacles. It quietly searches for the path of least resistance. Over time, it shapes valleys, carves canyons, and transforms landscapes without shouting, threatening, or competing. Its strength comes from persistence rather than aggression. Human influence works in much the same way. Instead of forcing people into agreement, guide them toward their own conclusions. Instead of issuing endless commands, create situations where cooperation becomes the easiest option. Instead of demanding respect, behave in a way that naturally earns it. People resist pressure, people embrace ownership. One of the greatest secrets of influence is allowing others to believe an idea belongs to them. When someone feels they have made a decision independently, they defend it with far greater commitment than if they were simply instructed to follow it. This requires patience, subtlety, and emotional intelligence rather than domination. Great leaders rarely control through fear alone. They shape environments, they shape incentives, they shape perceptions. Eventually, people move willingly in the desired direction because the path appears to serve their own interests. This is why persuasion is often stronger than authority. Authority can force obedience for a limited time. Influence creates voluntary commitment. Another mistake people make is becoming emotionally attached to proving themselves. They believe every criticism threatens their identity. Every competitor becomes a personal enemy. Every disagreement feels like an attack on their worth. This emotional attachment clouds judgment. The strongest strategist separates ego from purpose. Sometimes allowing another person to believe they have won creates far greater opportunities later. Sometimes remaining silent protects relationships that arguments would destroy. Sometimes temporary compromise leads to permanent advantage. Short-term pride often creates long-term regret. Long-term vision requires sacrificing the satisfaction of immediate victory. There is also enormous power in becoming difficult to predict. Predictable people are easy to manipulate because everyone knows exactly how they will respond. If praise always influences you, people will flatter you. If criticism always angers you, people will provoke you. If competition always excites you, people will lure you into unnecessary contests. Unpredictability forces others to think carefully. They hesitate because they cannot rely on familiar patterns. This hesitation creates psychological leverage. You should also understand that true dominance is never obsessed with controlling every individual. That is impossible. Instead, it focuses on controlling what matters most: your direction, your priorities, your attention, and your response. Once these remain firmly under your command, other people's behavior loses much of its power over your life. Quiet confidence becomes your greatest weapon. You no longer feel the need to announce every success or defend every accusation. Your results begin speaking louder than your explanations. While others spend their energy seeking recognition, you invest yours in building genuine capability. Eventually, people notice, not because you demanded attention, because excellence naturally attracts it. Perhaps the greatest misconception about dominance is believing it means defeating others. Lasting success is rarely built upon endless victories over competitors. It is built upon mastery of timing, perception, patience, and self-control. The individual who constantly fights eventually becomes exhausted. The individual who chooses battles wisely preserves strength for moments that truly matter. The world often celebrates loud displays of confidence, but history remembers those who quietly changed outcomes without creating unnecessary enemies. They understood that influence lasts longer than intimidation. Respect outlives fear, and strategic restraint frequently accomplishes what relentless aggression never could. When you learn to move with intention instead of impulse, to persuade instead of force, and to build leverage instead of chasing applause, you discover that the highest form of dominance is not making people fear your power, but shaping circumstances so effectively that resistance becomes unnecessary.